Hi everyone. It's good to see so
Hello.
many of you and welcome to the webinar. Hey Ray. My name's Imo and I'm in the UK customer success team here at Worksome. We've been so overwhelmed to see the demand for this. It's really great to have you all here. We looked through the attendees before starting and it looks like roughly half the audience are existing customers and half not currently using Worksome. But yeah, some of you will have seen me around before and we've even shared a drink or two. So nice to see you again. If you're new to Worksome, hello too. For those of you who don't know, Worksome is an external workforce management system. But for everyone here, we launched in the UK market back in 2019. And we made the decision to bring IR35 status determination and payroll into the product. This means that UK customers, both companies and freelancers, only have one system and supplier to interface with. This is definitely one of the biggest differences between our system and any other on the market. It means we have a lot of experience both internally in the team here and also with clients navigating it all with their hundreds of freelancers. Regardless of whether you use the system or not in the UK, today you'll find you'll get a real deep dive into the most recent updates in IR35 in the UK. If you have any questions, please do ask them in this GoToWebinar by typing them in, or take them to the forum afterwards. And please email ir35@worksome.com. We have 25 minutes and a tight agenda, so let's kick it off with some intros. We have Ray, our IR35 manager. Hi Ray, how are you doing?
I'm very good, Imo.
Good. And we have Ryan, the IR35 manager at the specialist insurance provider, Kingsbridge, also Worksome's insurance provider. Hello, Ryan.
Good afternoon.
Hello. So, what's up for discussion today? First up, we have investigations. The so HMRC are Before we get started,
I'm just going to jump in on that, Imo, if I can possibly. Rather than going through that, yeah. We've got a number of things we can definitely talk about, and anyone who knows me knows I could talk about these things for far too long. So 25 minutes, I definitely need to get my backside in gear, I would say. So Ryan, I have to say definitely thanks very much for joining us once again. And as Imo was definitely saying, you're a key contributor to Worksome and the service that we provide. So thank you very much. You also got a much wider view on the market than what Worksome have got, which is why you can bring such a different view into it, which is fantastic. As I know, Ryan, we're coming up close to the 2-year anniversary now of the IR35 reforms, or more officially the off-payroll working rules. Sort of the whole purpose of this webinar is to try and give everyone a bit of an insight as to what we see, what we expect, what is happening, what might happen. It's probably the best one to talk about at the moment, because I know that I've certainly seen that, and I know you have as well, is with regards to any of the HMRC inquiries. I don't think it's a big surprise to anybody in the know that we're starting to see noises from HMRC now. And you know, as I say, we're coming up to those 2 years. They are starting to sort of put their teeth in to sit back and see what they can do. But I know, Ryan, from previous conversations, you've seen some of those inquiry letters. So what do they look like? What's the vibe behind them? How does HMRC look like at the moment?
Sure. Yeah. So we've always known that compliance activity was coming. And, you know, I don't think anyone's naive enough to think that HMRC would bring these rules in and then not sort of do anything about them. Typically what you find is the revenue will let the rules kind of settle, and they'll bed in. It's a time where they can start to pick things that perhaps don't work with the rules before they update them, and then they'll look to try and you know, carry out the kind of compliance activity after that. And that's exactly what we've seen. You know, we've recently seen from roughly November a couple of end clients that have received what's just referred to as a HMRC off-payroll compliance check. So this letter is relatively informal as far as informal can go. It's certainly not aggressive, it's not aggravating, it's not kind of poking and prodding with the terminology that they're using in respect of getting the information that they want. But what it does, it kind of spells out that the revenue want to work with engagers and try and engage with end clients to try and understand what the application of the off-payroll working rules looks like for that business. Now, whilst it can look quite friendly, and on the face of it, it can be quite welcoming, these letters do also contain information in respects of the tax that may or may not be owed. So certainly if there's anybody on this session who has maybe got a letter or has got a partner or a client that has received one, just be cautious in obviously how you respond to HMRC with that letter, and certainly where you can engage with someone who can really shoulder that burden and kind of, I guess, handle the sort of back and forth with HMRC on your behalf, then obviously do make sure you do that. But certainly the tone of the letters really is one of kind of cooperation. In terms of what they contain, well, this was always going to be a bit of an unknown really, because historically, if HMRC open up compliance checks with contractors, there's a lot of information that contractors need to give, so it will tend to be quite heavily focused on the contract, things like the accounting period that's in question, the engagements that contractors have, that kind of thing. These letters are really all focused around the process and the policies which end clients have adopted in respects of off-payroll compliance. So quite quickly you see from the information that they're asking for that it's all in respects of what does your process look like? How are you assessing status? What's the number of contractors that you've engaged with inside, outside, or any other means of kind of engaging with labour? So it's not a deep dive as such just yet, but HMRC's kind of initial poke and prod, shall we say, is just in respects of really looking at the process that end clients have adopted.
And with that in mind, and I don't think this is a surprise to anybody who is in the know. It's exactly what you'd expect them to come in and do. I've seen those letters here, perhaps a bit more friendly than thought they might be. But again, beware of a wolf in sheep's clothing with regards to it. But do you think that HMRC at this stage are putting that shotgun approach in? Let's send out the letters and inquiry letters. And by the way, for any of Worksome's clients who may be involved on this watching us here, if you happen to receive any of those, they should absolutely be landing on my desk pretty soon, because that's how we can help you and sort of like not to leave it on your own and in that way. But to go back to my point, do you think it is a shotgun approach from HMRC as a case of let's send these out, let's try and find the individuals or the companies that are perhaps hoping to hide in the shadows, they perhaps don't have the robust process that they perhaps need, and HMRC will pick them apart, or am I perhaps overanalyzing on that?
Probably somewhere in the middle, because what's not consistent, so we've got a handful of clients with these letters, and not one of them is from the same sector or industry, and they're all very different types of end clients with varying sizes of contractor base. Some with lots of contractors, some with not so many. So it likely is HMRC ramping up that type of activity, scattergun approach. They've probably picked a handful of businesses or multiple businesses from different sectors, and those companies just simply get the letter, and then from that point, what HMRC will do with the initial piece of information that they have is they'll then risk assess whether or not to proceed with that compliance check. So it's obviously really important that the very early stages of that compliance check are handled correctly, because if you can satisfy the sort of type of curiosity that HMRC have quite early on, then more often than not that compliance check will go away. But it's where you can't do that HMRC's risk assessment might suggest actually let's take a deeper look. But one thing that we certainly don't know is kind of what's in that type of criteria that HMRC have in terms of the risk assessment or who they pick. And I think it's probably rightfully so that we don't know that, because everybody would just be pigeonholing themselves into a category where they simply cannot be touched for an inquiry, which from HMRC's perspective, being fair to them, that simply wouldn't work.
Well, interestingly, from sort of the other sort of same sort of a coin, just slightly different angle, is we've got one of our clients has come to us and they've actually been brought into a business risk review, which is fairly standard practice, but you can see by the questions that the revenue has sent them and what you need to do, it's all OPW, it's all off payroll work. This isn't sort of a case of we're trying to understand anything else other than effectively IR35, which again is no issues at all, but you can see there it's a slightly different angle as a way, as you're saying, is it, and it does feel a little bit like looking for the tripwires, which, as you say, if we handle things in the right way at the right time, you stand more of a chance of not upsetting the revenue, of them going, okay, it looks like you're in control of this and you're in a good position. We'll perhaps concentrate on the ones that are that are perhaps not so comfortable and in handle of it. So, which is quite interesting. I think that's probably the biggest part at the moment, to see how that sort of plays out this year. And I suppose, in essence, this year is probably a little bit too short on that, really, because, correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, I think all we're going to see this year is murmurs of activity from the revenue, because they can't bare their teeth until they really find somebody who they can go and latch onto. Agree, disagree?
Yeah, you know, we're certainly expecting more activity.
Yeah,
you know, that's for certain. We're certainly not expecting less. But yeah, your inquiries can go on for a long time. You know, it's not something that you settle in a month. It's, you know, 6 months to a year, 18 months, 2 years down the line that you'll possibly get an outcome. So one thing that you probably will hear quite a lot of is murmurs of this company's had this company's had this, the revenue have got someone, etc. But the best advice that I think we can give in that scenario is, you know, don't necessarily believe the murmurs. Wait until something comes out in the courts or something publicly out there from someone who's actually defended a business or not. Because sometimes those murmurs can do nothing but ultimately harm your confidence, which there could be no reason for them to harm it whatsoever.
There's a very good question that's come in, which is, what would you say a robust IR35 process should look like? Yeah, from my perspective, it's having something that's controlled. You've got control of the data itself, you've got control of the users, you've been able to grab that and bring that back for an audit, so you can actually sit back and talk about what's happened, how it's happened, and you've obviously got to, from a client perspective, deal with that from a point of reasonable care. So there's certain timings, there's certain processes that you've got to follow, and by not even following those, you could end up tripping over by not having that. There's a lot and that could go into that process, but what would you say, Ryan, is sort of the key points, rather than going into too much detail, what you're looking for from a robust process?
I think you sort of touched on it there, really. It's having something that's auditable. You know, what these letters and the information that HMRC are asking for really is show us your process. You know, if you break it down, they're asking for you to evidence your process. So having something that you can quickly audit, all in one place, easy to sort of pull information, pull data, and present that quite quickly if you need it. That will evidence step by step exactly how you've assessed status and what's gone into that. I think that's probably key. But outside of that, really, you know, it's just about having the right barriers and the right safeguards in place to make sure that status isn't just being checked by one pair of eyes, but make sure that, you know, multiple different departments are in your business, or people in your business, key stakeholders, are satisfied that status is correct. Now, I don't necessarily want to get into the rabbit hole of talking about CES necessarily, but as with anything off payroll, CES will often come up. The CES tool, as easy as it might appear, you know, unfortunately, in most cases, it's not going to provide you with a kind of fluent level of kind of compliance and kind of a fluent level of evidence compliance, such as that of most software can give you. You know, it's online. It's more or less just do this and you'll get a PDF. Whilst that might work fine for some,
Ryan, as well, that CES element, and whilst the public sector can't be used as an absolute reference to the private sector because they're going to argue in different ways, but one of the biggest things that went wrong in the public sector is the use of CES, and the argument HMRC basically when the users didn't answer the questions in the way that they should have been answered, which immediately shows you, you know, you've got to be an IR35 expert to be able to work with one of these things, which shows you the flaws in itself. So I agree, we could definitely definitely pick CEST apart. In actual fact, part of the next move is to sort of talk about CEST 2.0. Before we do, Imo's on, so I want to see what she's got to say.
Yeah, well, just going on to that, we've got a question here asking what the difference between Worksome's IR35 tool is and CEST, and then maybe we can go on and talk about the CEST 2.0 tool.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's a couple of, the real big difference with regards to what we're doing is the traceability. It's all happening in one system. It's all being controlled within that. So you're not having to go into a third-party CEST platform, take that, bring it out. And you can check, and all of those timing elements that we're talking about to satisfy reasonable care can be easily proved. Have we involved and published and moved all of that SDS where it should be? Have we dealt with the disputes? Yes, all of that, it ticks all of those boxes, which makes it very healthy. The part with CEST is there's very much a very strong argument that a big key part is assumed, that mutuality of obligation exists everywhere. And Ryan, I'm sure you'll be able to quote it. I call it the referees case that's going through the courts at the moment, but it's got some other proper name with it. But basically that's based on mutuality of obligation being argued. So from our perspective, it's using this very similar stance of CEST, but trying to find the flaws and adding into those so that they're removed, but keeping it, more importantly, it puts it into that robust process. That's the key part. But if we move slightly onto a sort of keeping on subject, CEST 2.0, Ryan, it's been discussed. That's the way I've seen it in the market. What's your understanding of that? Where is it going to happen? What's going to go with it?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of is it going to happen? Well, I think it's the revenue's hands have been forced. You know, they're kind of been tied in that respect. You know, they have to update it. And will it go ahead? Yes, I think it. You know, the revenue will release some form of update. The ABAB actually made reference, I think just before Christmas actually, that HMRC had assured them that there was a update in respect of the usability, etc., of the tool. So I believe a HMRC spokesperson actually did comment and say the way that they are assessing status won't change. So there's nothing in respect of really the sort of questions and the weighting that HMRC attached to them that will change. But it's more the usability of it, which for me, you know, I can't see a world where CEST can be trusted or is going to be fit for purpose, particularly in any scenario where an end client's going on and using it, just because you are left with so much to do post that review in terms of saving PDFs, saving them in a place within your organization, etc., etc. It's not convenient for end hirers, and the biggest flaw with the tool, and it will continue to be the biggest flaw, is that it just simply doesn't look at status in the same way necessarily as everybody else does. You know, the courts and case law is telling us one thing, HMRC's belief is something else, and you know that's evident in respect of their view towards the test of mutuality of obligation, which you just covered. You know, there's stark differences in terms of what HMRC think and everybody else, but until those things are really addressed, you know, for me the CEST tool is never going to be fit for purpose. And I think whilst you've got good credible solutions out on the market that are truly being you know, ran and kind of monitored by experts all the time, I think the private sector solutions are always going to offer a better alternative to the CEST tool.
Yeah, and I had conversations with HMRC going back a while now, I don't know, 12, 18 months, with regards, were there any plans on them enabling CEST to be integrated with any other systems? And it was a flat no. It was a simple no, we're not interested in that. It's too difficult for us to manage on what we're going to do, which means that it's always, as well as all of the flaws that you just said, it's always going to be an external system. You're always relying then on us humans who are inherently flawed to go in there and actually do the work, and then go and make sure you record it and put it in the right places, which, as I say, we are inherently flawed. We've got loads of questions coming in, by the way, so whether we fit this in today, I don't know, but if we don't, I can promise everybody who's listening, we'll definitely come up and pick these questions up either on a secondary session or one way, but it's great to sort of see this activity. The bit I'm sort of conscious of that I want to move on to here is about sort of like where we are. Is the question we put it down was a great time to sort of evaluate your IR35 position. I came across a really interesting statistic that I want to sort of bring in, and it's just an opinion, perhaps. The Treasury released the level of tax receipts that was received in tax year 21-22, which happened to be when IR35 reforms went in place. And they were up 22.5% on the previous year. Now, undoubtedly, some of that's COVID. But is there an argument to say that some people have been, that some of that uplift is because of contractors incorrectly put into an inside or a payroll environment when they've not been judged correctly? What's your thoughts on that, Ryan?
I would say it's almost inevitable that that's the fact. Because you've got to remember that the way that these rules are implemented, it creates a two-tier level of compliance. So you've got an end client who's going to be responsible for status. You've then got the fee payer in the chain, who is typically the recruitment agency. They're the ones holding the sort of hand grenade of tax liability at the end of that chain. So naturally, with more heads in the chain, you are naturally going to have a level of risk that will want to be mitigated. Now, it's fine if you're close to IR35, if you're living and breathing it, which unfortunately you and I both do, then you can quickly become quite comfortable with that risk and how to manage it and how to mitigate it. If you're an end client that is probably never touched IR35, it's always been left to the contractor in the past, and suddenly you are left staring down the barrel of tax liability, the burden of obviously looking at status, etc., that can be quite overwhelming. So the easy alternative is, well, if we payroll these individuals, if we place them via a umbrella company, etc., then the risk goes away and that risk no longer exists. And yes, there's probably a core group of contractors where actually they probably should have been inside of IR35. I don't think anybody would dispute that. There probably has been some contractors in the past that have just placed themselves outside and they shouldn't be. But our experience tells us that actually the vast majority of contractors probably were taxing themselves correctly, and actually the vast majority of contractors truly should be outside of IR35. And one thing that we're seeing quite a bit of now is end hirers that are suddenly saying, well, actually the last 2 years has really affected us because our rates have had to go up to accommodate the obviously the difference in tax. The cost of projects is therefore going up. The cost of running our business is going up. We're finding it harder to find good talent, and the best talent that we had are just finding better contracts elsewhere. And that's where I think a lot of businesses are starting to actually say, well, okay, let's look at IR35 again. Let's look at our strategy, look at our policy. How can we really integrate and adopt a policy that will suit the needs of our business whilst also keeping compliant? So yeah, there's ultimately going to be lots of contractors that have found themselves inside and shouldn't be, but hopefully that's slowly starting to change with time. And unfortunately, I think that's just all it is. It's time.
Well, the interesting point, before this was actually enacted, HMRC's own stance was that just 1/3 of the current contracting base was misclassified as outside and should be inside. So this is the people that that everyone says is the bad guys, and even they were saying 66% should remain outside. Yet there's definitely cases, Ryan, you and I would have both seen it, where clients have just gone 100% are inside now, because for all what you just said, we don't know how to manage that risk. We have to sit back and put it into an inside to remove that tax risk, but they're taking on a commercial risk of as you say, not getting the right talent, people walking away from them, or a big uplift in costs to be able to attract that same person to come through the door, which is not what anybody needs or wants. And hopefully what we're showing here at the very least is that there is a way to manage people. Not everybody, and if anybody thinks there's a golden ticket out there to get somebody inside, it isn't. It's actually, I think there's a lot more knowledge now, and certainly one of the things we see from our client conversations now is not so much can you pick it apart into the infinite detail. They know the infinite detail now. It's more just sort of matter of, it's a much more wider conversation about their strategy and how they approach the talent as opposed to the individual questions. But it is very much a matter of having an IR35 aligned strategy. Now that doesn't matter whether it's inside or outside. It's understanding what that is and then aligning with that. And in certain cases, you can change your business practices and you can get some talent outside, but you don't have to immediately put them inside. That's probably the key part. And I agree with you. People who are inside, if they're inside, they're inside. That's it. You can't suddenly mess things around. And anybody who does that's a fool, and setting themselves up for a lot of trouble, I should imagine. I've got definitely there's one question that's appeared on here, which specifically got my name on it, so I'm going to jump on it. I'm not going to mention who it is, but I know this person. And they've asked and said, if we received a letter, do we need to get you involved? Yes, you definitely do. If you're a client of Worksome, you definitely need to involve myself, and we can then help you. And at the same time, one of Ryan's colleagues will definitely be coming along and helping us as well. That's the whole sort of purpose of the Worksome Kingsbridge relationship, is such that we can all work together and help our dear clients out. So hopefully that covers that one. Anyway, Emo's back on, which means more questions.
We've got loads of great questions. Maybe we have time for one more or a couple more. We'll see how we go. So we've got one: do contractors based and registered overseas get reviewed by HMRC for IR35 assessment?
So if they're not a tax resident in the UK, IR35 doesn't apply. So even if they're working with a UK limited company, if they've got an NT tax code, it's not an issue. They don't have to be worried about that. But at the same time, if they are still UK tax resident, which will be determined by a number of factors, by the way, but if they are, then they will need to be still applying and worrying about IR35. And absolutely, because they're a UK tax resident, HMRC has definitely got the ability to grab them, shall we say.
Yeah.
The only thing I'll just add to that, and it is a very quick one, IR35 will exist in some form in every other country around the world. So whilst it doesn't apply here, do just obviously check that you are still complying with whatever the rules are in that jurisdiction. Most companies have or most countries, sorry, have a similar thing, but you know, do obviously just check.
Yeah. Perfect. Thanks, guys. We're almost out of time, but thank you so much for running us through that in so much detail and making it really clear. If you've written in here today and would like to discuss anything with us around IR35 investigations, please do message ir35@worksome.com and we'll get back to you. I'm going to say goodbye to Ray and Ryan now. And for everyone who has to leave, please go ahead. But if not, I'm going to go through a client case if you have a couple of minutes and want to stay tuned just to hear a bit more about what Worksome can do.
The only bit I'm just going to add on that before I disappear is just a matter of anybody who's got any questions, we'll of course go through and try and answer those as much as we possibly can. If anybody does want to reach out to those with those questions because they definitely want to be heard, IR35@worksome.com, send it across. We're not here to, we've picked up loads. I mean, it's impossible for us to go through. And as we said, if we did get a lot of interactivity, we would definitely look to hold a secondary session where we would specifically cover off the type of questions that we've got. It's been a pleasure, been great to, and thank you to Ryan for definitely what he's done and what have you. If it's all right, Imo, I'm going to stay around because I've got a little bit of time, so I'm going to listen to your business case and see how we go.
Absolutely, the more the merrier. Perfect. So we have a few minutes left, and for others still here, we are going to go through a quick client case, someone who's here at Worksome. We have a big retailer here in the UK who now has all of their freelancers and recruiters paid through Worksome. This client's team is led by the HR team, and they came to us because all of their freelancers were being subjected to umbrella companies' payroll. This wasn't the best experience for the freelancers or recruiters, with quite a lot of paperwork slowing down hiring and freelancers increasing their rates. So by using the system, they've seen big savings. The process being in Worksome has saved their tax team from having to be involved with every determination. They've booked hundreds of freelancers, lots through recruiters, and roughly 60 to 70% actually sit outside of IR35, which has saved them a lot on budget. Their team also saved the equivalent in 4 full-time employees, so reducing the admin of jumping between lots of different systems. Awesome, that's all we have for today. Thank you so much. If you want to get in touch again, it's ir35@worksome.com, and we will try and answer all of the questions that came to us today. I've been Imo, this has been Ray, you've been great, and see you soon. Thank you so much. Bye guys.
Thanks, Imo. Bye.